Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today I'm going to share with you 5 things I think you should know about the super full moon we have here on June 14th, 2022. Number 1, I wrote down accelerated integration. What I mean by that is an image came to my mind, and that's an image of a snow globe. And the snow globe, all the snow, you could say, represents aspects of your shadow that are no longer relevant to where you are currently at vibrationally. And this full moon is has shaken already. The snow globe's been shaken up. And rather than all of those little snowflakes falling back to where they were, what you might find is that a lot of them don't fit anymore. A lot of the old beliefs, a lot of the old patterns of thinking, a lot of the old feelings and emotional reactions, especially, maybe even some actual tangible physical aspects of your life, all these snowflakes, no longer belong in your snow globe. And you might find yourself going through a period of like reorientation and just almost like reorganization of the self and of your life. But in order to do this, there's a caveat. We must become very, very sensitive, because the more sensitive we are, the more perceptive we are. Because maybe even as early as months ago, we thought all these snowflakes were a part of us. We thought, oh, this is me. This is just who I am. This is just how I feel. This is just how I think. So this super full moon, I believe it's like the lowest full moon of the whole year. It's very strong, very potent, and it will make you very sensitive so that you can have that fine, accurate discernment of what is truly you and what is not you. So as there's this opportunity to really make some powerful strides forward and lighten your load, lighten your vibrational load, so that you can truly step in to this new phase of your life and step into this new, stronger, more authentic and grounded sense of self. As this transpires, you might just find yourself very sensitive to everything, very sensitive to your emotional states. They just might feel like more potent, especially the emotional reactions that are no longer a fit for you. You'll not only feel very sensitive to, but it's almost kind of unpleasant, unfortunately, when this happens. But the main thing is your awareness. Oh man, I feel so horrible. This person said something and I took it the wrong way, and I'm reacting emotionally, and this feels so uncomfortable. I feel like just so taken over by these emotions, but I know these emotions aren't really me. It's not how I would choose to consciously and logically respond. And what you're experiencing in this little example is the snow globe, the snowflakes finally making their way out of your globe, out of your body, out of your auric field forever. But what I'm trying to do is highlight that it's okay and actually very beneficial if you find yourself feeling very sensitive around this time. Number 2, I wrote down mind games. I like rock and roll. As you can see, my man John Lennon there has got a song called Mind Games. No real relation. What I mean by mind games is, what I really mean by mind games, honestly, is paranoia. Now, I was hesitant to put that on there because it's kind of like a charged word, but what I want to say about that is most people's ego, when looked at objectively and honestly, it's very paranoid. It's very concerned about losing stuff, losing our loved ones, losing our relationships, losing our safety, losing anything that we have, any type of attachment to. The ego is sometimes irrationally fearful about losing it. Or also, of course, most of us have gone through traumas, gone through, unfortunate events that have just fallen into our lap throughout life. And the ego's also always on guard for that happening again. So any little hint of anything that reminds us of something that had happened already, the ego can be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It makes this connection. It draws this line and says, it was a rainy day and my dog of 15 years old passed away. So rainy days all of a sudden become bad as a sort of a weak example. But the main thing here, guys and gals, is you might find that you are aware of it. I wrote down here, what did I write? I wrote, seeing the folly, seeing the silliness of the ego antics. I'll give an example of me, of what I'm going through, because I felt that was a little bit all over the place, what I just said. Later today, the landlord of my home that I love so much is coming because we're going to be staying here another year. And he said, I want to come and check out the house and make sure you're not like doing anything wild to it. I don't know. He just said he wanted to come check it out, is what he said. But my mind started freaking out. Like, what if he doesn't like what we're doing with the house, which is nothing unusual, and he kicks us out? All of a sudden, I'm feeling like unsafe. My family, myself, I feel this sort of intense feeling of like, whoa, all of a sudden, I'm not safe here. This other guy sort of holds my fate in his hands, and it all rests upon his conclusion of how well we're conducting ourselves in his home. That's where my mind's going. Why? I don't know. It's irrational. It makes no sense. But even so, what I've done all week is I've made the house look really good. I've gone through the whole house, every room. Just really made it look nice. I want him to feel like, okay, because I love the house so much. That's my rationalization. But the reality is I'm being freaking paranoid. This guy, it's like we're normal tenants. There's nothing to worry about. I know that logically. But emotionally, it triggered me. And temporarily, I was acting out about it, trying to like manage my own emotions by fixing and manipulating my external reality. But the point is, as the week had progressed, I started to realize, as I was going through the house, I started to just sort of like recognize, like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? Relax. You can do nothing and it's fine. And I started to kind of see the silliness of my ego, of my fear that for so long has run my life. And all important areas of my life, as I look back and even look within currently, honestly, largely, unfortunately, has been dictated by fear. Relationships, general safety, abundance, just things like that. My sense of self, is it enough? Is it worthy? Is it okay? What are people going to think? And this full moon is so bright, so low, so big, so super. It's a super moon. It's finally shedding enough light on this sort of fragile shadow to where it's like, oh my God, why? Why am I conducting myself in this way? It makes no sense. It's laughable. And this is kind of a gateway out of it. An opportunity to, once we see the picture clearly, we can finally start to break the patterns and let motivation, inspiration, creative downloads, joy, resonance, let that dictate where we go in our life, where we go with our thoughts, and all other areas where we go somewhere can now be dictated by spirit. That clean, loving, powerful, pure vibration. And just imagine going through life consciously in this way, creating your life from one who's now connected with spirit, no longer nearly as influenced by the fevered ego. Number 3, I was up last night contemplating a lot of things about my life. I just found myself in deep thought about, like, who am I? Where do I want to go in life? Etc. Anyway, number 3 is moving on. It's moving on. Moving on in some way in your life circumstance, closing a chapter. And moving on can be a tricky thing. What always comes to mind is I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts. I watch the UFC fighting. And it's an interesting sport because the career span where a fighter is at their peak is very short. Because it's a combination of experience, wisdom, and also just physical prowess, physical, that youthful fire. And there's a time where that all intersects. And for a short time, the fighter's at their peak. But oftentimes, as the fighter gets a little bit older, and even though they're a little wiser and smarter and more experienced, these young bucks, they come in and they just wipe the floor with them. And a lot of times, unfortunately, these fighters, even though they're well past their prime, it's clear that life is trying to show them, you know what? You got to just move on. They don't know how. That's all they know. It's their identity. They're just, it's all they know. And moving on implies going into just a totally new chapter. And it can be very intimidating and cause them to cling to something that's trying to pass by them down the river. It's something that was, but no longer is, and it's time to move away. And again, it can be tough. It's something I went through when I was a personal trainer. I've talked about it many times. My whole identity was wrapped up in that because I was a trainer. I read a lot of books. I trained clients. It was my career. It was my passion. And all of a sudden, it was just time to move on. Well, move on to what? What do you have coming up next, Vic? That's just the thing I didn't know. And that's what made it scary. But I knew inside it was time to move on. The thing is, though, is if we can allow ourselves to make these sort of pivotal transitions throughout our life, wherever that may land for you, then if we can sort of go with the flow more and not so much cling to something that was so great and just go with the flow, then if we let go, then there's always something really awesome to replace it. It's not like we're losing something and falling into this hole and we're just oppressed with this big hole in our heart, this void in our life. No, maybe for a time. But what happens is that vacuum, that void gets filled with something like a breath of fresh air from the universe, a new project, a new identity, a new pursuit, a new chapter. And if we can let go and move on, then that new thing, it will present itself pretty quickly and it'll resonate, it'll excite you, it'll make you really grateful that you had the courage to let go of whatever it was you're clinging to. And then here you are in this new chapter of your life in a state of joy and just excited anticipation and wonder. Number 4, moving on again, but also in a different way. Moving on spiritually. Like life, our spiritual growth, it's not this static thing. It's not linear. It seems to come in these seasons, if you will. And if you're moving on in your life, usually connected to that is moving on in some way, oftentimes some type of deepening of your spiritual growth. Now, if there's one thing I've learned about spiritual growth is it's always surprised me. The next thing, the next level, you could say, it's always been something that I didn't see coming. I remember many years ago when I first had my spiritual awakening, I thought I was like this freaking spiritual God's gift to humanity. And I was like this newbie awakened person who knew nothing but thought he did because he had a couple of glimpses of the divine. I thought, well, from here, I guess I'll just ascend. I guess there's not much left for me on this earth, right? So to the next level wasn't that at all. It was, oh my God, humility. I was humbled by life, shown just how far I have to go. My life fell apart. I didn't expect that, but it was part of my spiritual growth. And then one of the next phases was, building a business and taking control of my life in like a 3D way. And just taking action and doing a lot of ordinary earthly things. I didn't see that coming. I thought it was just this linear path to the source. But it's been kind of interesting. And as an example for me right now it's changing. And I've been sharing about this for years, the last year or two, about how I'm realizing that this pursuit, this forward movement towards purpose, towards abundance, towards manifestation, all great things, for me anyway, that's also coming to an end. I'm realizing that I could manifest billions of dollars and have a greater impact on the planet than anybody who's ever lived. And I can just tell, having gained enough of that that's not going to make me feel any different. That's not going to bring me any closer to my source. It reminds me of this book I read called The Surrender Experience. Yeah, The Surrender Experiment. Really powerful book, everyone, by Michael Singer. He wrote, what's that popular book by Michael Singer? The Untethered Soul. He's known for that primarily. This other book was about his life, and really fascinating life, I must say. I really want to hype up the book. But anyway, there comes this point where he was on this sort of aggressive spiritual path, where he was meditating for hours a day. He was living in this little hut off the grid, really almost living kind of like a monk-like life. And he was kind of doing what I was doing a long time ago, just trying to find God in my quiet little corner. And he had this dream where he was walking down this path towards the light of God, as he described it, something like that. I'm paraphrasing here, but he was getting closer and closer and closer to this light, getting further and further and further down the path, and he got just up to it and realized there's a glass ceiling. He couldn't go any further doing things the way he was already doing them. He realized there's got to be another way, the elevator or something I need to find, but I'm not going to find it down this path. And that sort of ironically led him into entrepreneurship, and he started this huge business, and it was not what he expected spiritually. So you might find yourself being called, spiritually speaking, in some direction, and it might have caught you off guard. It might not seem like it's going to be the best option, but if you feel calling and inclination to do it, I think you'll find that it is the move to make. And lastly, number 5, I wrote down here: success, happiness, and abundance. Now, some of you are hearing that and saying, Vic, nah, I'm actually in kind of a weird state right now, dude. The full moon's kicking a lot of stuff up for me. I feel very sensitive. I feel very emotional. I feel taken over by my shadow. Just so you know, for one, that when that happens to you, it's not that you're regressing. The full moon isn't doing anything to you. It's that you've come so far spiritually, vibrationally, that you're now able to contain and handle those lower states of awareness, those fragments, those soul fragments, those aspects of your shadow that were once at one point obviously suppressed because you just couldn't handle them. They were too much for your psyche. But now that you've grown, you're allowing yourself to experience these deeper parts of your shadow, the fear, just the ego unrest, and however that manifests. And as you're able to be present and be with those emotions, it's kind of like a dark cloud that you look at and acknowledge and validate of your shadow, of your inner child. And once you do that, it dissipates. And then it gives way to purer states of joy, bliss, love, gratitude, compassion. All these higher vibrational states of being are directly connected to your ability to allow yourself to feel these shadow elements. But this full moon is extraordinarily transformative and extraordinarily positive, and it's something that if you're watching videos like this, you're going to really thrive in, even if it's not easy all the time. I'm reading this book right now called Ecstasy by Robert A. Johnson. And here he talks about happiness versus joy. I didn't know this, but apparently happiness basically means like good fortune, good luck. It's a sort of a random thing you find yourself in, not a state to always be in. It's like you can't always have good luck. And a lot of times I find in the spiritual communities, people are like really feeling like they're doing something wrong. They're not always happy. And what I've learned from this book and just my own life is to accept that happiness is one of many parts of life. And if I can accept that, and especially if I can allow myself to sit with my deepest, darkest, most suppressed aspects of my shadow, as hard and challenging as it can be, that gives way to a joy. Joy is like a spiritual feeling, a connection with the source of yourself, of life, and that is more lasting. That is more part of our actual core state of our set point, our state of being. Not happiness, not favorable circumstances. But to get to that joy, it requires just as much presence as you can muster, as much willingness to be with the emotions that life right now is trying to help you look at and help you clear away. And I wish you all the courage in the world, my friend. I don't think you need it personally, but it's a nice thing to say. Anyways, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this reading and got something out of it. I'll see you most likely next week. Have an amazing day, a fantastic week, a beautiful and powerful and transformative new moon. Much love to you all. Thank you all as well for your support and your love and your comments and your likes and your shares and your kindness. Much love to you.